Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Best Corporate Blockchain Practices in China. This is a webinar organized by Blockchain Business Bridge. If you are not familiar with us, we are a blockchain project supported by the Danish Industry Fund. We are a collaboration between the Danish Innovation Center in Shanghai, Danish Industry, DI, Asia-based, IT University of Copenhagen, European Blockchain Center, and Danish Chinese Business Forum. The goal of the project is just as the name. We're aiming to build up a bridge between the blockchain ecosystem from Denmark to China. Today, we have the honor to have a speaker who is Mr. Vincent Wang, the Executive President of Wanxiang Blockchain. Vincent, would you like to say hi to us?
Hi, everybody. I'm honored to have an opportunity to speak here to share with you our journey in blockchain and our many examples by way of illustration. So the topic of my discussion today is in blockchain we trust. That is indeed the slogan printed on the wall of my office well, everywhere else we get a chance to. We'll get to that, how to build a technology ecosystem to rethink a broad range of industry applications. Here, by industry, I mean a broad range of different sectors, not just in the manufacturing industry. I have to make that clarification because of the nature of Wanxiang Group. We are indeed one of the leading industrial groups in China. Our bread and butter is in auto components, but over the years we have diversified successfully into China's financial sector. We have an affiliated company called Wanxiang Holdings, and Wanxiang Holdings owns a number of the leading private sector financial companies in the country, including Wanxiang Trust, including Vincent Insurance, including a mutual fund company called Zhejiang Mutual Fund. And it is, I need to recognize the importance of the Wanxiang Holdings business in the financial sector because that's the part of Wanxiang's well-diversified business that get us interested in blockchain and other emerging technologies such as AI in the first place. So what kind of company is Wanxiang? First of all, Wanxiang combines the traditional and the new. And secondly, Wanxiang has, since the mid-1990s, has been one of the first Chinese private sector companies to go global. And we have a major presence in the US and in EU. What brought us to blockchain? This a little bit about what we view as a basic building blocks of blockchain. And since I'm speaking to a Danish audience, I promised myself to mention Lego at least twice during my presentation. So here's the first one. So what are the Lego pieces that we use to build blockchain solutions? One, distributed ledgers. So this is the part of Wanxiang, part of the blockchain value proposition that promise tamper-free data records. Two, smart contract. This is a part of blockchain that promises execution, trustless execution, and efficient real-time execution. And crypto, data protection, privacy protection across domains, not only for the individuals, but also, the individual privacy protection is much talked about, but enterprises need privacy protection and data sovereignty as much as individuals. For example, to bring industrial internet to fruition, we need to be ensured that across the supply chain, different members of the supply chain, their data could be navigated, but without sacrificing the data sovereignty, without creating unexpected consequences for data usage. And then the spiritual guidance of blockchain consensus, easily established network of the willing without heavy IT and legal costs. Because you don't need to plan everything, every IT solution stack as a vertically designed solution that involves long lead time development lead time and a huge amount of costs, and with very little flexibility as your business needs and the technology need progress. So particularly relevant to the industrial space as we observe is that with blockchain, you can do curated data sharing. You can do seamless and real-time brokering and value exchange. That's very important. For example, without that, IoT will not, there won't be any real world viable business model around IoT if data access is not immediately linked to a micro value exchange. Then it will again resort to centralized and more longer term IT solutions. So blockchain made that unnecessary. And then beyond data, blockchain could be used to allocate computing resources and to establish business networks, to create incentive and governance structure at the same time. Now, I'll come back to that later on. That is very important. Governance mechanism design and incentive design. So since we got our hands and got our feet wet in the whole blockchain technology, our thinking has evolved. In late 2014, when we first began to investigate blockchain, we see its value. We see Bitcoin. We see its potential in the financial sector as part of the fintech building block. But then by around mid-2015, our thinking has evolved. Our thinking has evolved to the point to recognize blockchain as a much more broad-based technology of the same potential or even greater than internet back in the 1990s. With blockchain reorganize the business relations. So if some of you in the audience may have read or heard about Professor Tom Piketty's recent revisit to Das Kapital. And the two basic concepts of the Das Kapital is a productive force and a productive relation. In a way, you can say that AI, by improving efficiency, is a productive force. And it's a productivity machine. But what is blockchain? And blockchain reorganizes, offers new means to reorganize business relations, or as described in Das Kapital, productive relations. So combining AI and blockchain, basically you're looking at another broader based and open-ended industrial revolution. Open-ended, I mean, if you open up not only the productivities front, but also the productive relationship front, there's no end. That's why it's open-ended. And once we recognize that great potential, we begin to evangelize it. And in the meantime, we talk the talk, and we also begin to walk the walk. We look back on the history of emerging technology, such as internet. We went through what made a viable internet ecosystem scalable and successful. We identified a number of keynotes. For example, when the technology is less than mature, someone needs to work on the foundational layer, on the underlying technology. And someone needs to work on the early adopters, startups. So what do they need? They need money, they need guidance. So we run incubator, we run accelerator. And then like all emerging technology, a broader social impact, we need to make sure that there are platform providers, there are industrial alliances, there are regulators, a community of regulators who need to understand blockchain so that they can develop the regulatory logic along with business logic and technical logic enabled by blockchain. And we identify all these nodes. We even recognize that there are other nodes, for example, creating mindshare amongst the general population. So someone needs to work on the blockchain-oriented media introduction to reach the broader segments of the society. And we methodically invested in every single node of this whole ecosystem. Cumulatively, we have invested, apart from digital assets, we have invested about $140 since 2015. And then we also began to host a major event called Global Blockchain Week in September in Shanghai, and we are in the 6th year now. It's one of the most successful, it's one of the 2 most successful blockchain focused events. And it had the virtue, it had the merit of being the only one and large scale event that's truly dedicated to blockchain, not fintech and blockchain, not supply chain and blockchain, but blockchain as a technology, as an ecosystem. So based on the based on the combination of investments in innovation, technological innovation, and based on our ecosystem development, we have begun to build a interwoven distributed ecosystem around our core business, around our smart city initiative, which is significant in Hangzhou, 8.3 square kilometers, called Innova City. And we leverage our presence in the financial sector, and we leverage the brilliant group of young people that we have recruited and directly, or we have worked with. That number over the years has amounted to tens of thousands. Now, a quick reflection in summary of the practices and tactics is that first, so I mentioned that we have a methodical approach. So what do we mean by methodical? We identify emerging technology of potential, be it blockchain or AI. And we practice design thinking on a new ecosystem. What is a well-designed new ecosystem? Based on past experiences, but looking forward to what could be possible in the future. For example, compared to internet back in the 1990s, the blockchain has a number of unique qualities. First of all, it's from its very early days, it corresponds to digital assets. From its very first days, it crosses national borders, and so far there's no Great Wall, and there's no firewall around blockchain. And there's a number of applications that promise, blockchain-based applications, that promise to break down the barrier to greater and value-added global supply chain. So that's the design thinking combining the old and new. Zoom in on keynotes of the ecosystem. So I mentioned that, describe that, what are the keynotes of the ecosystem. Then we make strategic investment, then we promote synergy amongst these set nodes. Because the only thing you provide to these individual nodes are money, then other people can do that. We would only be one of the earlier practitioners. So what else do we provide? We provide synergy across these different nodes. We make sure that we use events, we use accelerator, incubator to make these different nodes better work together. And then we connect the dots in business models and in incentive. So basically, in the process of building a blockchain ecosystem, we are practicing the very value of blockchain by ourselves. So the success of our globalized blockchain ecosystem testifies to the great potential of blockchain as an enabling technology. I will share with you some of the projects that we have worked on over the years, and some we're still working on. And these are not the complete set of projects that we have worked on. I select them by way of illustration of what blockchain value creation could look like. Now, for those of you who have investigated blockchain related to digital asset, or who have not had a lot of direct experience with blockchain before. So I hope this page will help. Blockchain value at a glance. So we organize these, we present how blockchain from the underlying technology upward all the way up to the application domain, what layers of value added, what layers of components that make these value added possible. So I will just highlight the I think still underestimated value modules of blockchain. For example, people generally recognize that attestation and privacy safety is is the key value of blockchain, but there are a lot more. Real-time transaction. Real-time transaction seems mundane, but real-time transaction is critical for smart city applications to have a viable business model, regret-free business model. And real-time transaction is critical for your for the future of smart or autonomous driving vehicles. So real-time transaction is one of those value modules that's so important that you often just take it for granted. And then here, in the world of hacking and in the world of lack of trust amongst different parties in organizing a business network, real-time transaction enabled by blockchain without complex IT infrastructure assurance is really important. Cross-area value circulation. So this I will illustrate with the example related to what we call a kind of a moon chain, how to turn live cattle into a digital asset. And here that brings banking, private equity, and cattle raisers all together. Flow exchange, basically, this is, for example, you have different streams of business. You can use blockchain to bridge the different segment parts of the strain, these parallel strains, and discover new business model. Multi-party collaboration goes without saying. Blockchain is one of the technology that actually make business network solid and testable. So people talk about industrial alliance, but so far I don't believe that industrial alliances in any country in the 20th and 21st century have even taken us back to the age of, to the Middle Ages, late Middle Ages, where guild at least is that guild or guile? No, pardon my questionable pronunciation of that word. I haven't heard that word pronounced. So G-U-I-L-D in Europe, it's widespread in Europe that over there. So far in 20th and 20th century, we have not seen equally viable craftsmen or business alliances like that. And with blockchain, that's really easy. Credible data source and ecosystem empowerment. And I hope some of the examples that we'll share will explain some of that. Supply chain finance, I will quickly skip that. Supply chain finance is one of the few mainstream blockchain applications. So basically here, the value creation by blockchain is to make sure that the data or the account receivable would the data behind account receivable could be tracked and in a tamper-free, trusted way, so that the bank would know actually you would have these electronic receipts that are supported by blockchain that are tamper-free, so that they know your business flow is actually authentic and they are the risk profile of supply chain players who try to get a loan from the bank will be greatly reduced. Blockchain and auto supply chain alliance. So this is an example of what a blockchain can do in building a business network. So here we brought together some of the leading Chinese auto OEMs, and we bring together some of the leading land shipper of vehicles. And we create an incentive system, we create a governance system on which different tiers of the supply chain could work with each other seamlessly. We use blockchain enabled business network to allow first tier shippers to provide endorsement to second-tier and third-tier shippers in front of the banks to address supply chain finance questions. But we also, on this network, on this distributed network of interaction, we allow people to initiate business requests to optimize business flow. When the society is becoming more affluent, the beef consumption is going up, and well, for a newcomer in the global stage of beef consumption, of beef eaters, the problem is that the local supply chain is not very well organized, and it's kind of messy, and there's not a lot of credentials, not like well-established Western countries in like Canada or US or Denmark. Now, so the challenge is that cattle, those people, entrepreneurs who raise cattle, it's not always easy for them to get financed. Basically, with blockchain, what we are doing here is that we use blockchain and intertwined IoT technology. We create a necklace, a temper-free necklace around the cow's neck. And the necklace is based on blockchain technology, generating hash when any meaningful data exchange is produced. So what you will have is that there's a digital twin for the cow that capture the biometric data, that capture the location data, its well-being throughout its 18-month feeding cycle, so that that brings a number of benefits. First, it's a lot easier for these folks who raise cows to be financed, but that's only the very beginning. What that also allows is that beef in an 18-month feeding period, the cattle will appreciate on average about 12 to 14%. If you subtract all the costs. So that is a very quite rare, stable, and regular assets. So imagine you're running a fund, whether it's someone's retirement fund, teacher's retirement fund in Oklahoma, or a Chinese retiree fund somewhere in Manchuria. You, apart from investing in the high risk, high return assets, you also use this as a portfolio component. So this would not have been possible if you do not have a reliable way to mirror a physical asset with a digital twin. So this is what, that's another example of the value of blockchain. And auto industry quality assurance. So industrial internet, people have been talking about that forever. What's the challenge? Why is industrial internet such an obviously great thing, not becoming more successful? There are many, many reasons. One of them is a matter of trust. So no factory wish to submit their own manufacturing data without a strong enough incentive and without assurance that it won't be abused. It could be abused by bad people, but it could also be abused by quote unquote good people who are reading the data in a way that may not always be responsible. So how do you allow your data, industrial data, to be accessed without compromising your data sovereignty? Now that is a possibility brought by blockchain, and we put that in practice with our own auto business. It will come out toward around October, November timeframe this year. And charity trust platform. So this is, again, one of those more straightforward blockchain applications. I won't belabor the point, but I include this page here to kind of ease into the recent worldwide pandemic. This is one of our answers to the pandemic. And during the pandemic, especially in the early days, China was struggling with a medical supply problem. And Wanxiang, we work with Wanxiang Trust, which I mentioned before, one of the largest trust company in China. We built a blockchain-based platform to track donations and to match donated medical supplies to the needed party and to create visibility, transparency on our platform.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you very much,
I'll
Vincent.
pause there, catch some breath.
Yes, the blockchain journey of Wanxiang is definitely impressive. And thank you for sharing with all of the ongoing cases here. They're very, very interesting. Let's hear some of the questions from our audience. So during your presentation, we talked a lot about what blockchain can do. Now we want to hear about something blockchain cannot do. What do you think are the limits of blockchain technology?
Yes, that's a great question. Actually, what cannot be done, deciding what cannot be done or what should not be handled by blockchain is as important as what could be done or what should be done. I think what blockchain is not omniscient. Blockchain cannot address issues offline that before you generate your first hash. So you need to make sure that the first hash is trustworthy. Otherwise, the layers of assurance that you provide later on is useless, right? So how do you do that? Well, actually, this is a kind of a tricky situation. First of all, I think there are two answers to that. One is those in the blockchain community are very well versed in concepts like oracles. So oracles will decide. Oracles is a kind of broad term that includes most of the technology, adjacent technology that could be leveraged to make sure what blockchain receives in the beginning, the provenance of this data that you assure, whose reliability you assure on the blockchain in its distribution and in its usage phase. But what about the provenance? Provenance is assured by the set of adjacent technology that we put under this larger, broader category called oracles. Oracles, for example, data analytics go into oracles, IoT go into oracles, and machine learning can go into oracles, detecting unusual data provenance. So this is important, but still, someone in Chinese there's an expression called 道高一尺，魔高一丈. Basically, this is no matter how the priest can jump 10 yards, and the devil, Satan then jump 100 yards, right? So how do you address that problem? I think there's no perfect answer to that, but the blockchain technology by its very nature allows quick and low-cost iterations. So this battle is never ending, but you want to make sure that on the side of the good guys can iterate faster than the bad guys and can respond sufficiently quickly before enough damages are done. So these quick iterations to improving the Oracle machine is essential. Another element is that we are particularly interested in technology that connect the physical to the cyber world. Now, IoT has been my longtime passion since my Intel days, and we will continue to tap synergy between IoT and blockchain. But we don't simply do that. There's a tendency amongst many startups to just combine blockchain, to incorporate blockchain in the front end of the application. Now that is never such a great idea. So the shallower you embed your blockchain, the easier it is tampered with, or the easier it could be bypassed. So what you want to do is that on the chip level, or even on the bare die level of the very semiconductor that goes into your IoT devices, already have the hash ability embedded. And then, or at least, for the lighter duty IoT devices, at least have the private key embedded. And so that it can interact in a trustworthy way with the surrounding environment with edge device. So that, I think, chip technology is particularly important to be able to support blockchain.
Okay, let's see the next question. Wow, it's a big question. What role did blockchain play in China's economy?
That's I think it's important to compare the experience of blockchain in Europe and the experience of blockchain in China. So I will skip the commonalities. Sure, there are more in common between China and the rest of the world in tapping the value of blockchain. But in China, I think there's a general rule of thumb in China about what technology might be successful. If the technology is serving an industry where there's no incumbents, where there's no viable large-scale incumbents, that's usually where China would excel. Case in point, e-commerce. But China did not have a very well-established retail infrastructure as the US or EU. So that's why Alibaba came on the stage and just basically swept all the consumers away. So no incumbents means, having no incumbents means that there's, your customers are, the value you created to customer are basically in 0 to 1 rather than 1 to 2. And then there's another important value that is, when there's no incumbents, there's no resistance, there's no lobbying against emerging technology. Oh, it's killing the retail shops. Well, if the retail shops are not all that powerful, all that present anyway, then it's easier for e-commerce for new technology enabled new industrial sectors to be successful. And another example is WeChat. WeChat combines a number of things where there are no strong incumbency in China. Be it social media, be it mobile e-commerce, and be it media. Multimedia entertainment. So of course that situation is changing now. WeChat rose around the same time as Taobao becomes an everyday necessity. But in the meantime, and TikTok is on the rise as well. So there will be more competition. But in its early days, the value creation offered by WeChat is unrivaled. Same thing with blockchain. So in China, what is often pointed out as a shortcoming of Chinese economy is that there's no well-established trust infrastructure. Well, I use the phrase trust infrastructure because trust in a more well-established economy that is built over centuries. Trust is woven into the commercial fabric. In China, the rise of Chinese economy took just a few decades. So it's the few decades are not long enough for behavioral modifications to come in play to make people's behavior and habits adapt to the reality, to the commercial reality that requires greater trust. Now, so there's no incumbent trust infrastructure. This is where blockchain comes in. Blockchain creates trust where there is none. It doesn't involve expensive lawyers or high IT costs to make trust possible amongst the different players in the value chain and amongst different players in the industry. So that is watch for industrial sectors where there are no incumbents, and that's most likely where blockchain and probably to a certain degree AI as well will shine in China. So this is the presence of many sectors where there are no major incumbents is an essential fact about Chinese blockchain application. It also explains why blockchain inspires so many Chinese entrepreneurs and businesses to think long and hard about what this can do to my industry. Industrial internet, I mentioned before, but to be more precise, industrial internet, again, industrial automation and digital transformation for manufacturing industry in this world factory is also an area that, a domain that there's not a lot of incumbents. There's no GE, there's no Siemens, but here, if blockchain, as what we're trying to do here is use blockchain to build a more horizontal digital data infrastructure to support transformation of these Chinese industries, especially the SMEs. I think that will bring value not only to these SMEs, but also to their companions in the supply chain in China and in the global supply chain in a trustworthy and profitable way.
You just mentioned a case which blockchain is adopted during the COVID-19. I have a question here. How do you expect the COVID-19 crisis will influence the trend of adaptations in China in blockchain?
I think it will accelerate it. There are a number of things, there are a number of challenges that we see during the pandemic that are probably addressable with blockchain. I say probably because we're still working on that. We want more partners to work on that as well from the global blockchain community. One, quick response, rapid response. And rapid response requires not only an efficient, centralized governance structure, but also how that vertical structure could bring in horizontal, the platform resources available not in the governance structure itself, but in the broader society, in the broader industries. And blockchain certainly offers a way to build that relationship very quickly and make it productive very quickly in days. I'll give you one example. The Red Cross in Wuhan was struggling with distributing all these donated face masks and other medical supplies to the needed party, to the hospitals, to the patients. Right? Now they were behind, and over 10 days they distributed probably about 2% of everything they received, and they worked day and night. But then they recruited a service provider, a commercial company, who stepped in, and in 2 days they distributed the remaining 98% of all medical supplies, and with traceability, with accountability. So this is not to say that the kind of vertical governance is not important. Actually, the resolve shown by government agencies during the early days of the pandemic was probably critical in preventing it to become worse than it actually did get. On the other hand, if the broader society can be recruited in those early days, probably it would be even more productive. And so I think this is the point of a point to reflect as we embrace, not necessarily we embrace to other black swans. How do we use blockchain to empower anti-fragility? Now, along that same line, another example, during the pandemic, a lot of people lost their jobs, right? So a platform we're working on is a flexible employment platform, not temps, but flexible employment platform, not only for the lower paying jobs, but also for expertise. Because as a fast growing economy in China, medical expertise, educational expertise, these are rare assets as well. How do you ensure a more equitable distribution of these resources to broader layers of society? Now, blockchain, a blockchain-enabled flexible employment platform can bring expertise, whatever level it is at, to the much-needed sectors or companies. So that is another inspiration. That is not an intrinsic pandemic problem, but pandemic certainly make the employment situation a lot worse. Companies cannot hire, and individuals cannot look for jobs. So blockchain can ease the pain. So that I hope that that helps.
And the last question, do you have some practical examples of how Danish companies can utilize the blockchain opportunities in China?
Oh, I think China, for multinationals, the good days, the golden days of the China market have not arrived yet. They're just arriving. So Chinese wealth has finally reached a level that a viable middle class is formed. And so it's a shame to leave the market that everybody has been cultivating for decades, just when the reward is so close. Okay? I think in Denmark is a widely respected European nation in China. Great brand image, and many Chinese of my generation and a few generations later, probably after until these days, grew up reading Hans Christian Andersen, playing Lego. Hey, you know, that's the how to market and how to develop the high value added merchandise is I think that's a great opportunity for Danish companies. From industrial, the industrial components, there are many that require specialized technology and expertise. And agriculture, high value added agriculture. I mentioned beef. Hey, I just had Danish beef
It's
2 weeks
time for
ago.
dinner anyway.
Right, and then Michaela authenticated with blockchain. So those are some examples. But another factor to consider is how to scale already successful sector of Danish industry. For example, you mentioned mask. Mm-hmm. And mask, to be more successful, to make its business model replicable, to integrate upstream and downstream, can certainly use blockchain technology to cooperate with the increasing presence of Chinese shippers and Chinese companies, enterprises in the increasing number of Chinese free ports and free trade zones. I think there will be a lot of opportunities to establish a trusted business framework using blockchain effectively and productively.
And if you are a Danish company, you want to utilize the blockchain opportunities in China, please stay tuned for our upcoming blockchain bootcamp organized together by Wanxiang Blockchain and Blockchain Business Bridge. You can follow our LinkedIn page to look for more information.
Absolutely.
So as last, I think we should celebrate with some Danish. You know that Denmark is also famous.
Michaela,
yeah.
Actually, Michaela, I will end this. I know this is taking very long, but I'll end this on a Michaela note. Imagine. Are you familiar with Michaela as a business model?
Yeah.
They don't.
We're all fans of Michaela.
Right. They don't even make their own beers, right? They're like they use beer foundries to make their beers, and they create recipes. They focus on what they're good at. They create innovative recipes, and eventually there will be, if there are not already, people who want to copy that and who wish to benefit from that inspiration. And so far, I know Michaela founder has kind of kept an open view on that, but there's no reason to bully the well-intentioned, right? So we can use blockchain to protect this kind of recipe, to protect the provenance not only of beer, but also the very idea behind beers, the very innovation that makes its beer possible. Let's work toward that.
Cheers
and cheers to that.
Cheers.
Cheers.